And we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first Recruiters Hangout of 2016 in February. Took us a while, but we're back, and we're very pleased to have Greg Savage and Roy Ripper back with us again. Two of our most popular guests on the show in the past year and a bit. 200 of you have signed up to watch, which is fantastic to see. He's breaking a nice record there. So very pleased to be back with us. I'm coming to you not from the Norfolk Norwich RF control tower. I'm in the hotel room in Goodwood, which is the old sort of sports ground, racing ground of the southeast. So nice to be here. Mark Stevens, one of our co-sponsors from Smart Recruit Online, is at the in-house Recruitment Expo, I believe. He's there listening in. Bit of background noise, so I think Mark will be fairly quiet today, but it's good for him to tune in. Thanks, Mark. Louise Triance is here, always lurking in the background, as she said. And Louise from UK Recruiter, also a sponsor, will be on Twitter, hashtag Rec Hangout, as always. And I'm just going to put that in the chat for you guys to use. So please join in with that hashtag. Alan Whitford, Abtech Partnership, strategist, etc., and our able host will be leading the way with the questions today. If you have any questions or comments, do use the Webinar Jam chat. We'll try and get to some questions near the end of the show, but as you guys know, if you've ever listened, Greg and Roy have a lot of insights to offer, so so do feel free to join in, but we'll try and get some questions near the end. My name, I always forget this, is Louis Welcome. We've got Ripper, we've got Savage, and then the rest. So we've got some good names. Now I'm going to be quiet and and the title, Seducing Candidates and Disrupting or Self-Disrupting Recruitment. So that's what we're discussing. Alan, far away.
Welcome, everybody. Sure, the seducing part of people to sign up, Louis, we hope they're recruiters and that they're actually here for all the right reasons. And of course, a bit jealous that you're down there good with the home of speed. So we're looking forward to seeing you out there on the track later. And of course, yes, this is the Gripper Show. We tried to come up with something to combine, Greg Savage and Roy Ripper. We came up with Gripper. We came up with a few others, but we probably couldn't use those prime time. And two of our most experienced participants. Greg is, of course, down in Oz, so we're keeping him awake, and we appreciate that. And Roy looks like he just woke up, so we're all on the same page. Guys, I'm just going to turn it over to you to start with, just to do a quick intro, and then we'll kind of kick off. And as we said, it's about seducing candidates, but I think Roy will make the point a bit later on in the show that we also have to think about how do we seduce customers as well. So Roy, go ahead. Who are you and why are you here, Roy?
Thank you, Alan. Hi everyone, it's Roy Ripper here. My name really is Roy Ripper. I always get asked to tell people that. And actually, Greg and Alan, what a great lineup today. Greg Savage and Roy Ripper and Alan Whitford on the same panel. I'm absolutely amazed. I think people know my history. I've worked around the recruitment industry for 28 years now as a consultant, a manager, an owner. People know me, I suppose, quite well for the Recruitment Juice product, which I launched several years ago. And actually, do you know what? This is a really interesting place for me to be because we've also got Louise Triance in the room. I remember, I'm not sure that Louise will, but Louise has been my social media person of choice for many, many years. And I remember years ago her saying to me, well, you really should do a blog. And then, I don't know, several years later, she was saying to me, you really should have a Twitter account. All of these different things, and I was resistant. So, this is something that I've been dragged to in the last, say, 5 years by people like Louise and by people like Greg and Mark and Alan, really kind of promoting this within the industry. So, guys, I'm here today as a student, somebody who's been implementing this stuff over the last 5 years, still learning. But hopefully I can give you, some of the things that I've done to promote my business in the last 5 years.
Okay. Thanks, Roy. Appreciate it. And we're looking forward to you sharing your insights. Greg, as I mentioned, you're down in Oz at the moment. You're about to start that tour of the rock tour of Australia and New Zealand, but you're also showing up here again in June, and already a few people have been chiming in saying that they're looking forward to the tour. So again, who are you and what are you doing?
So I've been a recruiter for 35 years. Won't bore you with a rundown of all 35, but highlights would probably be starting a company called Recruitment Solutions, which we built from 3 of us to 250 and listed on the Australian Stock Exchange 10 years later. That was exciting. And then I was CEO of Aquint, of their business outside of North America. That was 5 offices at the beginning, and 10 years later we had 35 in 17 countries. So that was a huge learning experience. For 3 years, we did a management buyout, and for 3 years I ran Firebrand until I sold it 3 years ago. And in that period of time, I've been acting as an advisor to the industry. Mainly that takes the form of being on boards of recruitment companies, advisory boards, of which I currently act in that role on 12. So that's a fantastic privilege to see inside these organizations and to learn from them. And I also consult to people, and I do the speaking gigs if they take me to interesting places. And they will be, because I'll be going to the UK again in June, and this time to Ireland as well, Scotland and London. So all those dates are on my blog if anyone is interested.
All right, excellent, and I'm sure they are. We've already got a few people in the jam conversation saying that they're looking forward to it. So guys, let's kind of dive straight in. I mean, it's interesting that we've talked about seducing candidates. I mean, we're all been in recruitment a long time. Obviously, I've only been in it for a couple minutes, but it's interesting that we seem to come full circle. We're focusing on the candidate again, we hope. Why is there this sudden refocus, if you will, on having this greater focus on candidates?
If Roy's okay, I'll leap in, and then maybe he can fill in all the bits that I miss out. I mean, it's a very logical and good question to ask. And by the way, I don't think it's focused on candidates at the exclusion of clients. It's not a case of now suddenly one and not the other. We actually have to change our tactics around clients, and in many ways, the difference between clients and candidates is a figment of our imagination. They're all customers, and they merge. Clients become candidates and vice versa. So a lot of what we say about candidates is true of clients, but the key thing to understand, I think, is this, that the world is changing. We know that, and there are a couple of factors that are sort of conspiring to change the way recruiters need to behave. First of all, and this is so true of the UK, as I said, I was there recently, and it's even more severe there than this country, and that is we are entering an era of sustained cataclysmic skill shortages. And this is a very important thing, because we're entering an era where candidates are going to be hard to find. And that means, when you combine it with the fact that many clients have built their own talent acquisition strategies, they've got in-house teams, they've got LinkedIn, they've got social media strategies. In many cases, they are better than the average recruiter at building a brand that attracts candidates, that I believe clients are only going to pay us to find candidates they can't find themselves. It might sound like a trite thing to say. It's not. It's a very, very important thing to say, because most recruiters do not actually have tactics to find unique candidates. Most recruiters have dumbed down the process to where they compete on speed and price. And that is a slippery slope to recruiting hell if you do that. So what you really want to do is to build new tactics to engage with candidates before they go to other recruiters and before they go to your clients direct. And most of us don't have those tactics because we're going to old school tactics like job boards and LinkedIn. I consider LinkedIn to be an old school tactic. I'm not saying it's irrelevant. In fact, you've got to get better at it. I'm not saying job boards are dead. They have a role, but they're not differentiated. Everyone on this call can go on a job board. Everyone on this call can go on LinkedIn. There is no, and all your clients can do the same. So there's no, you've got to be very, very good at it, but that's only allowing you into the game. It doesn't allow you to win the game. To win the game, you've got to develop a wide range of tactics. And the other thing, just before, because I know I've now hogged the stage a little bit, the other thing is we've got to understand that the digital era has changed the way candidates behave. We know our behavior has changed as consumers, and I like to think that we need to treat candidates the way consumer marketing organizations treat their consumers. It's far more sophisticated. Even my local bottle shop up the road sends me an email when they think I've run out of Shiraz. Even they can predict, because I've got a buying pattern, when I'm next going to buy. But most recruitment companies have got nothing around that predictive analytics, the data, the CRM. In fact, most recruitment companies, their database is a candidate graveyard. I'm not saying the people are dead, although some of them probably are dead. What I am saying is they're dead to you because there's no interaction with them. So we need to understand that if we are going, clients will only pay us if we can do something they can't do themselves. We're not a loved industry. They don't come to us out of love and affection. They come to us out of need. And they don't need the candidates they can screen themselves via job boards. So we've got to be a lot smarter. So that's the intro, I think. What do you reckon, Roy?
I'd echo all of that, Greg, and I agree with you. I suppose the thing that I see is this absolutely massive opportunity out there right now. Greg's right. There's a global skills shortage, and clients will pay for you to find candidates that they can't find for themselves. The opportunity that I see is immense, though. I remember starting in recruitment, back in the day. Greg was there, and we used to traditionally place an advert. People would respond to that advert. We put the best ones forward, but in that practice, we were doing stuff. Our ads were better than the ones that clients were writing for themselves. So, 25, 30 years ago, this was regarded as the necessary evil, and some of us got really good at it. The other thing that I noticed is that back in those days, the larger recruitment companies, the international recruitment companies, it was a simple economics, issue, which was they could spend more money on that job advertising than the small niche recruitment business. The great news is, and let's forward to today's opportunity for recruitment businesses. Today, it is a level playing ground. It's a level playing ground for the people that are switched on to it. Today, niche is good. I've always celebrated niche, but niche is really, really good. And it's not about having these monolithic candidate databases of thousands upon thousands. It's not about selling that as a positive to clients and saying, look, I've got 25,000 candidates on my database. It is, as Greg said, it's our ability to be able to identify passive candidates and active candidates, but to engage with those people. It's not like the good old bad old days where candidate would register on a database. This happened to me. I registered with an agency before I was working in recruitment, and I was a really junior. In fact, I registered there when I was about 17 years old. It was the first job. I was working my first job, and I registered at the agency. I got a call for the first time from that agency 6 years after, talking to me about a position that would have been relevant to me 6 years prior. And that was inexcusable. Now, unfortunately, I think that example is and was indicative of how the recruitment industry has been in the past. This opportunity is massive because now it's not about how much money a recruitment agency is able to spend, the budget's able to spend in terms of attracting clients or candidates. It's about the engagement piece, and more often than that, that doesn't cost anything other than our time and our strategy. So I see now, I'm working with business owners, of SME recruitment businesses, up to 50 or 100 recruitment staff, that are taking on the major powers in recruitment and beating them hands down. Greg and I sort of, I don't know, again, as a way of introduction, I've got to give her credit for this. I know Louise is on the panel today, Louise Triant. I remember 5 years ago, more than 5 years ago, in fact, I've known Louise for probably more years than she or I would like to remember. But years ago, Louise was saying to me, well, you really should do a blog. And I'm like, oh, Louise, I can't do that. Why would people want to do that? And eventually I kind of got with the program. Years later, she was saying to me, well, you really should have a Twitter account. I'm saying, oh, Louise, what's Twitter about? That's a load of rubbish. I came crying and kicking to that, screaming and kicking to that particular table. People like Louise and, and Alan and others have been championing this approach for years. But what I've found is that, and including in my own example, I always didn't want to hear that message. You know, I always wanted to stick to the old ways. And I think that landscape has completely changed. I'm sorry, Alan, I probably hogged that particular answer.
No, not a problem, guys. Because it's well, what's interesting is you've already both hit on some of the key points we'll discuss, and just do that quick reset. We're already 15 minutes into the Gripper show. You know, a hashtag Rec Hangout. We're getting some great comments incoming in the webinar jam, and Louise is monitoring the ones on Twitter. I think one of the interesting things and themes, a couple themes I think are coming out from our audience, is differentiation between what the in-house recruitment team are doing, because Greg, you're quite right. We can't, as recruitment businesses, be expecting to charge the in-house recruitment team for what they can do themselves, and we only have to look at the fact that today Mark is sitting at an in-house recruitment 2-day conference. Right? 10 years ago, that was impossible to even contemplate. Did not exist. You couldn't have found enough in-house recruiters to show up at a 2-day conference. Couldn't get them for a 2-hour conference. So yes, our overall landscape has changed in terms of in-house, and a number of our audience have asked us about that, have tried to gain. They've picked up a lot of the tools. But one thing that I'll look at, because I've worked both sides of the street, the recruitment industry, the recruitment agencies and businesses, we always go first. We pick up on the newest technology, the newest sourcing technique, the newest way to try and find people, because we're driven, funnily enough, we're driven by money in a lot of cases. So we're going to try anything and everything we can to find those new candidates or get to grips with them or engage with them. The in-house is restricted by a much different dynamic, which is I got to get a bum on a seat. And I also am part of an HR team, and I got 25 other things I have to do this week. So we have the ability to differentiate, I think, as a business. But that does still come back down to ultimately, it's not how lovely we are, we make friends with them, as one of our people has asked. If we can't deliver quality candidates that they can't find themselves or won't find themselves, and it's either or, then we do struggle as an industry. So Greg, you started on that task. How do we differentiate what we're doing? How do we differentiate and bring better candidates or different candidates or more niche candidates that our clients can't find?
So let me just pick up, I've noticed in the chat this question from internal and so on versus agency, or is there a difference? My view on that is that essentially internal recruiters and agency recruiters can equip themselves and need to equip themselves with a wide range of skills, tactics, and tools that are very similar. On the internal side, they have an advantage, potentially, of representing a brand, and that employer brand may well be a lot stronger than the recruitment company brand, because after all, the candidate's going to end up working with that company. So they can finesse that and massage that, and that can become a significant advantage, particularly if the candidate feels they're going to be communicating with their end employer. On the other hand, and this is important, and recruitment agencies have not understood this, if we do work out how to connect with candidates, and I'm going to say this slowly because you might think I've lost it, connect with candidates before they are looking for a job. Great recruiters will build relationships with niche candidates before they've made the decision to move. This is happening, as I said, my bottle shop up the road knows I want to buy Shiraz before I do. The New South Wales Waratahs Rugby Club, they email me and sell me a season ticket before I've realized the season's even started, because they've looked at my past buying behavior. So there are many ways we can go into this that agency recruiters can engage with candidates. What we've got to do is actually get hold of unique candidates. This is a phrase that I use, and I don't mean a unique individual like somebody who comes from Mars. They are unique to you. They are not going through another agency. They're not going to clients direct. And therefore you can act, and this is the important word that I'm building up to, you can act as their agent. In this industry, we don't truly act as agents for our candidates, not typically. We spam them out, actually, and we compete spamming them to the same places. And it's been dumbed down to that level. I would encourage to go the other way. If we can connect with people through relationships, and that's where the social brand, the online brand, the CRM, and the data becomes important. And then you will know and you'll be engaged with someone, and so you can act as their agent and you can represent them to a variety of jobs, and you can tailor their job search in their best interest. And that's your advantage over the in-house recruiter, who is, after all, only representing one employer. So I would really encourage recruitment agencies, on the one hand, to start thinking about acting as an agent. And that brings me back to your question, which is what? Remind me again, Alan.
You want me to remember what I asked you? Oh dear, I think
Yeah,
I've
well,
lost
you want me to
that.
answer it?
Yeah.
I think you're saying, what do they need to do to actually? Well, look, I would say this. You know this word disruption that we all hear all the time, and change and all the rest of it. This is my advice. Recruitment companies and even individual recruiters listening to this, you should disrupt the way you do your business yourself before somebody comes along and disrupts it for you. You know, we are naive if we think we're not going to suffer some sort of Uber effect. I don't think our industry will be wiped out like some of the other industries like books and CDs and others. I think our industry will undergo significant change. And so when I say that to people, they say, Greg, well, what do you want me to do? Go and invent Facebook for recruiting or go and invent Uber for recruiting? No, you don't have to invent some big bang. The technique is that disruption can be incremental. Disruption can be point by point. What you need to do is look at everything you're doing in your business and say, why? Why would you do that? I said this to a client the other day. Why do you spend $1 million a year to a client who only turns over 20 million? How about that? Why do you spend $1 million a year on job board advertising? You know what he told me? I said, does it work? He said, well, 12% of our placements come from job boards. I said, well, why the fuck do you do it? And he said, for branding. I mean, good God almighty, for branding. And that's disruption. You know, there's an opportunity to say, let's stop doing that. Let's start doing things that count. And so I think what we've got to change in recruitment companies is totally our tactics around candidates. We should also change the way we work with business development with clients. I mean, most recruitment companies have got directors who are hammering people to do more stuff that they shouldn't be doing anything of. You know, mindless cold calls, speaking to 50 voicemails in a day. This is ridiculous. We've got to reinvest. That's what you should disrupt. We've got to disrupt the whole concept of what selling in the recruitment industry is. It's now about social selling. I mean, ultimately, yes, we will get in front of people and sell in the old-fashioned way. And I'm not saying you throw out all the old skills. In fact, a lot of the old skills are more important now than they ever were. For example, influencing skills. You know, the craft of recruitment. Most recruiters, even those who are billing a lot, really they're just keyword matches. Just spamming resumes around town. I know I'm being harsh, but I'm not actually. They're keyword matches. And if you actually are confronted with something difficult, like handling a counteroffer, which is a nuanced, influencing skill, they have got no idea. And I'm going to tell you that 9 out of 10 of the placements recruiters are going to make in the next 5 years are going to be subject to a counteroffer because of the skill shortage. And so, to answer your question, what we really need to do is to dump things that we shouldn't be doing, of which there are a lot. You know, we are a crazy, crazy industry, which is getting crazier because we are getting recruiters to do things that don't work, like cold calls, like running ads on job boards where people will freely tell you that only 1 out of 100 people who apply to their ads do they eventually put in front of a client. What a ridiculous candidate acquisition model that is. And yet, you go to those same recruiters and they've got no brand on Twitter. The company's got zero social footprint. They don't use CRM. They don't interact with their database. They don't train their recruiters on building their brand on LinkedIn. They don't even have the skills of phone. You talked about old-fashioned skills. Well, how about picking up the phone to seduce a candidate or to talk to a candidate? I got an email the other day. I'm sure I've told you the story before, so I guess this must be a while ago. One of these, I'm connected to 15,000 recruiters on LinkedIn, and I get headhunted all the time. The best one was for an assistant chef job in Wigan, England, for £6,000 a year. And I'm living in Sydney, and I can't cook. So that's the sort of, is that what our industry is? That they use LinkedIn to spam me with that shit? Surely there's a smarter way that we can engage with candidates. And that way is around building brand and engaging digitally and engaging with people. You know, all our recruitment lives, what we've done is we've built candidate acquisition around getting people's attention. Some of you are old enough to remember putting ads in newspapers. The bigger the ad, the better. And then we went to job boards, big ads, and billboards. Do you remember billboards in the tubes in London and all over Sydney? It was all about grabbing their attention. The secret to candidate acquisition, and I'll finish on this point, is to know their intention. What are they going to do? How come my bottle shop up the road with 2 employees knows when I need to buy Shiraz, and yet the best and biggest recruitment companies in the world do not use the data to understand, for the most part, some do, to understand when a candidate is likely to move? That's what we've got to be doing, and we've got a long way to go. But the good news is there's brilliant opportunities for those who get it right. I'm investing in recruitment companies. I think it's a cool time to be in recruitment. Having said that, more than 50% of recruitment companies are going to go bust because they're yesterday's heroes. They're looking backwards, not forwards.
Okay, there's an awful lot for us to digest there, Greg, but yeah, I know.
I can slow down. I can slow down for you, Alan, if it's too hard. You know, I can slow down. It's okay.
That's all right. That's all right. Louis is taking the notes. I'm just hanging in there. But what it is interesting is if you wanted to distill that down to in a very simple nutshell, at least to me, is where we've started the thing, which is about the candidate. And I agree with you. I think that what most recruiters have forgotten about is what is the actual candidate behavior. Before I'm thinking about a job, during that whole job piece, you and I could talk about counter offers for the rest of our life, because that was the first thing I learned in recruitment. One of the first things was when you talk to the candidate and give them the offer, talk them through the counter offer process right then. And you're right, that doesn't happen now. But we could that could be a whole other show. But what I think we're missing also is how is the candidate looking for a job? And if we're not trying to be in their mindset of how they're looking for the job, all this other cool stuff we might think we can do is a loss. And I agree with you. So I spoke at the job board conference at the end of last year in London, and 75 job board owners in the room, tried to push them on why their business was threatened to basically dead silence. And why? Because one of them took me aside afterwards and goes, hey, our revenues are up 25% year on year. We don't have to do anything different because, Greg, your $1 million a year spend client just keeps pouring money into the job board. So, but that's another industry to think about. But what we've missed is the candidate using the job board that way? I'm a candidate. I set up job alerts and hope that some of them work. I don't actually actively search the job boards very often. And if I do see an ad, all I do is write down the name of the agency and then call them and say, well, that job didn't look right. What else are you doing? And so I think we have that different perspective. And Roy, when you're doing your training, are your recruiters talking to you about the candidate and what the candidate actually does, and where is the candidate? How do we engage with them?
Yeah, Alan, I'm so sorry because there's a bit of echo on your mic. I'll try and pick that piece up.
I'm getting a bit of echo from you as well, Roy. Greg, could you try mute?
Is that better for you? No.
Could I do what? I lost you.
Could you try muting for a minute whilst Roy's talking, Greg? Just trying to get rid of this echo.
Sure. How do I do that? Sorry to be dumb.
It's just at the top, should be around my forehead. There's a little button up there, the microphone with a slash through it. Great.
Is that better, Louis?
Yeah, it was coming from Greg, so let's all keep muted, guys,
okay,
while someone's talking. So.
Okay. Alan, that question there about the candidate piece, and am I seeing it from the recruiters that I'm training? Look, I'm going to remind people of a few things. First of all, the idea of relationships in recruitment is not a brand new one. For the best recruiters, it's always been about the relationship. A phrase that I hear a lot today, and the reason why people are engaging in social media and content marketing, etc., is this phrase to get people to know, like, and trust you. Now, again, this is a brand new phrase, but actually it's something that the best recruiters in the world that I've certainly worked with and been part of their teams have understood that concept from the very first recruitment deal that was ever done. If people didn't know about relationships, they weren't great recruiters. So the relationship thing, I think, has become it's come to the forefront now. So it's now I don't know, more people are aware of it, and that's a cool thing. The thing that I think we have to do as an industry, and again, the thing that great recruiters have done throughout history, is kept in the mind's eye of both their clients and their candidates. Now, in the past, that would have involved phone calls, it would have involved meetings, it would have involved putting on events, it would have involved a whole blended approach of different things different touches that you could do with a client and a candidate to maintain that relationship, to maintain that know, like, and trust factor. The great news is that we have tools now that, again, put into that blended approach, help us do this so much easier. And the enlightened recruiters, the enlightened ones that I speak to, are embracing those things, and actually have been embracing those things for, you know, as soon as they're out. They're early adopters. A lot of them are millennials, so you know they're picking it up and they're using it. And that's the other thing I think that's driving this. I put up a you know, thing. The average person is spending more time online now than watching TV or engaging with other media, newspapers, magazines, etc. So if our candidate and our client data, sorry, if our client and our candidate audiences, and that's us, all right, human beings, if human beings are spending more time online, why on earth would you not want to engage there with them? And I'm kind of reminded of, you know, back in the day, if I was wanting to do business with, let's say, you know, Alan Whitford, I would, you know, find Alan's name maybe in a directory or something, good old-fashioned directory. I'd be phoning him almost completely blind. I would be trying to do some kind of research, but unless it was on printed material, it would be really difficult for me to find. Fast forward to today, it's like, what do you have available to you? You know, and this is how I know I do it, because I'm a user. You know, I'm someone that uses all of the tools at my disposal. So now, if I'm deciding to do business with Alan or interested in finding out about Alan, the first place that a lot of people in business look at is the LinkedIn profile. But now what I'm trying to do is look at, well, has Alan got a blog? You know, let's look at Alan's stance on things. Let's look at you know, what his beliefs are. Let's look at his comment on our industry. But apart from the blog, I'm able to look at his tweets. I'm able to look at his relationships. I'm able to look at all of these things before I engage. And that's the piece. I think a lot of candidates and clients are making the decision to work with individuals ahead of time. They're qualifying those individuals before they've even picked up the phone or engaged with them. And it's that know, like, and trust. Now, one of the questions that came up in the feed there was, well, how do I do that? And I'm really, really keen to kind of, you know, talk practical rather than just purely about, you know, the theory and what's happening in the industry. If you are not on, at the very least, all of the social media profiles, if you are not on LinkedIn, and, you know, look at your profiles as well. If your profile, it reads like a CV, remember, as a recruiter, you're not looking for somebody to employ you as a recruitment consultant. You're looking for somebody to recognize you as a go-to expert within your niche. So write your profile appropriate to that. Also, screw these profile photos that look like you've just stumbled out of a club or sitting in a hotel room in Goodwood. Sorry, Louis, couldn't resist. You know, the photos of you on holiday or, you know, whatever, sipping a pina colada, that's not the kind of profile you want to put across, unless you, I don't know, placing cocktail barman. You know, look at your social footprint. Look at how you are presenting yourself to the market. And to the recruitment trainer that once said to me, oh, Roy, you know, is it worth being on Twitter? Here's my answer to them and my answer to the whole industry. Fish where the fish are. That's always been, you know, the recruitment mantra. Fish where the fish are. So if your candidate and your client is on Facebook, and let's face it, most people are, you have to have some kind of presence on Facebook. If your clients and candidates are engaged in Twitter, then you need to be in Twitter and engage in Twitter, because that's where your candidate and client base is. I've probably gone over on that one. I hope you don't mind the little dig at Louis' profile picture. In fact, on his LinkedIn profile, I think he's got a really good one.
Thank you, Roy, and thank you for bringing up the fishing analogy, because I've been having slides about the fishing analogy in my presentations for years, and I usually get a bunch of blank looks out there when they see a picture of my father-in-law and my wife in a fishing boat. But but hey ho, there we go. Do a quick reset. It's 10:35, 25 minutes to go on the GravAge #Rec Hangout show. Greg Savage, Roy Ripper, talking about everything about candidates and how we need to get our businesses up there to be able to seduce those candidates. We've had some really good streaming, guys, in the group chat. A lot of people agreeing with you. A lot of people, actually talking among themselves about what other things we could do. Steve Ward throwing a bunch of good advice in there. He's just jealous he's not on the show today, I think. I think one of the key things we're looking at now is a lot of people saying, okay, that's fine. We know we've got to engage with candidates. We've got to do all that lovely stuff. And you started touching on it now, Royce. Where do I find these so-called new candidates? Because obviously I'm too lazy to look at my database and actually ask any of them, because that would take me somewhere. I'm using the job board, but I'm not actually searching the job board database. So how do I find these new candidates? And I think you're right. I've got to be where they are. But Greg, I'm going to put it back to you. Is there such a thing as new candidates anyway?
Remember to unmute yourself, Greg.
I was just checking whether you guys were paying attention. I knew I wasn't unmuted, obviously. I reckon that we've got to think of it like this. Recruiters have got to understand that candidate behavior is changing, and you touched on this earlier, Alan. You've got a whole group of people who are basically continuous job seekers. They are not necessarily applying, but they're browsing. And that means you have the opportunity to engage with them at many different points, and they're actively searching. You also have another group of people who are never going to apply for a job because their expectation is that their next job will be brought to them. And that's something we've got to understand. Most recruiters' talent acquisition tactics are very reactive. They expect other people to come to them because that's how we've been brought up. We've run ads and they've come to us. And just going to LinkedIn, I think we've also got to understand about LinkedIn a number of things. A lot of people are not on LinkedIn. A lot of people have dumbed down their LinkedIn profiles because they are sick of getting approached. In some cases in Silicon Valley, I understand, for up to 40 approaches a day from recruiters. LinkedIn has actually made the recruitment process less efficient because data is now so easily available. Don't get me wrong, job boards, you will get people. LinkedIn, of course, you'll get people, but you need to cast the net much wider. And people say, well, where? Well, let's go to Twitter, for example. If you spoke to an average recruiter, they are not on Twitter. And they don't all have to be on Twitter because, as Roy said, you need to go where your candidates are. If you're looking to hire digital marketing people, well, Twitter's probably a good place. If you're looking to hire accountants, maybe not. But it doesn't matter. You need to understand how to use those platforms in two ways. One is as a skills hunter, and most recruiters would have no idea how to search Twitter and use it as a database to search and approach people. There are lots of tools. There's Follower Wonk, there's Manage Flitter, there's others that you can. Twitter itself has a search function. Most recruiters don't even know it's there. So you can search people, and once you've found somebody that has the skills, you have a wide variety of opportunities. And this is a very important point. I think people don't make the difference, or the distinction, I should say, between finding somebody and recruiting them. They are different skills. I mean, I'm sure I've said this before, but I've got a 15-year-old son 2 doors away, 2 bedrooms away here, and he can find anything on the internet. You don't want to know what that kid can find on the internet. But could he recruit them? Of course not. That's a subtle skill. So if you find somebody on Twitter, then what do? Well, you could tweet them. You could search their LinkedIn profile and you could engage with them. You could find out where they work through LinkedIn and go and stand outside their office and rugby tackle them. There's a wide variety of approaches, and recruiters tend not to be subtle about the seduction. And it is a seduction because maybe if you found a candidate who's not looking but who's got the skills, maybe it's a slow process. Maybe you engage with them and build up a relationship before the day comes. And I think we've got to understand that with candidate acquisition, it's not about history, where we run an ad, we've got a candidate when we try and place them. We will do that. But we've also got to start engaging with people who might actually only give us the go button to look for them in a year's time. And recruiters have such a short sort of time frame. And I'm the same. My God, I've spent a year saying, what about this month's budget? I've spent 35 years saying, what about this month's budget, this month's results, this month's activity? But we've also got to say, what about candidates for the future? And so there needs to be a slow seduction. You can use Twitter to track people via conference hashtags. I mean, if I was a rec-to-rec person, I'd be following the hashtag of this conference. because there's 160 people on this conference, and all of them are exposing to me that they're recruiters. So if I was on Twitter following this hashtag, I could connect with 160 recruiters today on Twitter and build a relationship with them. I may not place them in the next week or two, but as I'm fond of saying to people, you still intend to be in business in 6 months, don't you? So let's start engaging with people now. So there is a wide variety of we mustn't, we mustn't think that it's all about job boards and LinkedIn. Of course they're crucial. Of course they're important. Of course we must become good at using them. But there's a wide variety of other tactics. And the other thing that I'll just finish up by saying is, while I'm talking a lot about engaging online, there is no suggestion that we don't convert that to an offline relationship. We do. We do. As soon as we can, we do. And that might be through an interview, it might be through a client visit, it might be through a beer, it might be through a coffee, it might be through a number of ways. But I'm not saying it's all done online. Online is where you find them. Seduction is usually done over the telephone, in the meeting, and in real life activity. And most recruiters, I'm afraid, don't have that breadth of skill, and it's not their fault. It's because, well, to be perfectly honest, it's because the leadership is lacking in many recruitment organizations to disrupt, to do things differently. As some people do, and they're the ones who are going to make a lot of money.
So let me ask you a question on this, guys, because I want to pull this back into also the business, the recruiting businesses, because we're getting a lot of this commentary. I think we've all shown a number of different ways about candidates, and we could even talk about for a little while, is there even such thing as a unique candidate, given all the data that's available, and given the searching that Greg's son can actually do to find everything about us. Thank God, all I can say is that the internet didn't exist when I was at university. But what about, how do we translate this back to our recruiters? And I'm seeing a lot of the commentary here in the JAM comment, or people saying, look, I get this, but I just can't seem to get my recruiters, to actually get hold of all of this, because they get stuck in their rut of whatever rut that is. And how am I getting, Roy, how am I training the new recruiters to embrace this online information-driven world? And if they're not making 30 calls an hour, what else are they doing, and how do I get them on board with this? So I'll hit that to you first, Roy.
It's a great question, Alan, and it's really interesting. Echoing what Greg said, the management level, the senior management level, if they're not enlightened, my biggest advice to them is get out of the way. The people that are coming through as recruiters now are actively engaged in these, in these activities. Greg mentioned his son. My children too. Even my youngest child, 7, 8 years old, is sort of promoting their own YouTube channel. Kids coming through to the recruitment industry know this stuff. They know the power of community. And I know of a couple of recruitment bosses that have said to me, oh, I've banned Facebook in my office, or I've banned the use of their Twitter accounts or social media accounts during the day. And I'm asking them why. It's like these people are coming to the workplace with the skills that we as an industry have to embrace. And like Greg, I'm old school. Okay, I'm old school. I'm all about take it offline. I'm all about the meeting and getting in front of people. I've always seen social media and all of the technology tools as a way of identifying people and me getting on their radar ahead of the game. But as soon as possible, getting it offline, teaching these new recruiters the relationship building skills, the rapport building skills. A fantastic book that I know I promoted to my private coaching group, Influence by Robert Cialdini. If recruiters are not reading that book right now, it's called The Power of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini. I'm sure Louis can post a link up. That's the book. That's the book for people to read, because Cialdini talks about reciprocity, he talks about scarcity, he talks about all these different drives that as humans, all right, and that's the thing, forget about candidates, clients, millennials, whatever. As humans, these are the things that the buttons that people sort of not only buy but behave with. And the modern recruiter, the most successful recruiter, needs to understand these drives. And that final piece, Alan, it's about teaching them the skills past social media. And And that's the edge that I think, with the greatest respect to any internal recruiters, on here, and there are some really enlightened ones, but that's the edge that I think we as a recruitment industry will have and will always have, hopefully, over the internals. They're using the same tools. They've been catching up over the years, getting the LinkedIn Pro accounts, and if they're working for big corporations, they understand Twitter and branding and all of those things. They're working with marketing experts to realize this. The thing that they're struggling with, that the recruitment industry and the traditional and the best practice could bring to this, the unique bit that I was asked earlier, is that ability to convert an online relationship or introduction, or let's call them a prospect, taking that prospect and creating a client or a candidate or a lead by using sort of rapport building and persuasion building skills. I hope that answers your question, Alan.
Thanks, Roy. Appreciate it. And by the way, just for all of our audience out there, we're trying to bring in some of your thoughts, although it may not have been naming and shaming you as we do it, but we've got a lot of activity going. And we'll be trying to address those key questions in Louise's post-event blog, and if enough of you are demanding it, we may even have to get everybody together and write a bit of a white paper on this. Of course, I'm going to dump that in Louise's lap because he's our Mr. White Paper guy. Greg, you've been touring the world, trying to teach people how to really change their business, to make those changes you alluded to earlier. How do you get those companies that you're advising to get their recruiters engaged with doing the right thing as opposed to what you called before doing the wrong thing? What methodology do you use for them, or what do you suggest they do to get their recruiters trained up and doing the right thing?
It's a leadership issue. It is a leadership issue. So when I talk to companies that say to me, yeah, look, we think social media is important. Here's a budget of 25 grand, and our receptionist can help. Can you build us a strategy? I say no, because it's not about having a social media strategy. It's not about having a digital plan. It's about shifting yourself to a social and digital organization, and so it has to stop from the top down. And that doesn't mean to say that the CEO has to, be the most Twitter active person, but the CEO does have to be on social, and then we need to, if the company has got more than 6 staff, if there's anyone here who runs a recruitment company that's got more than 6 staff, your next hire shouldn't be another recruiter. It should be a digital marketing person full-time in your business, and you need to have a strategy which somebody who knows what they're talking about needs to give you, not a very clear tactical strategy, if that's not a contradiction, about how, and the way you work it is this. You've got to first work out what exactly are your goals by having a digital strategy. And typically there'll be 3 major goals, but it could be different. 1 is to connect with candidates that your competitors can't get. And 2 is to engage with clients that otherwise wouldn't talk to you. And 3 is to build a brand amongst other recruiters who might come and work for you. So those might be your objectives. And then you work out where your audience lives. When I say lives, I mean which platforms they're on. How do they digest their information? Where do they get there? What do they trust? And it'll be different. To be placing accountants, it'll be different from nurses. But they'll all be on social somewhere, and they'll all be digitally possible to connect with. And so having worked out your audience, it's then about a content strategy. How are you going to connect with them? How are you going to engage with them? And then it's distribution, and that takes a full-time person's job. To answer your question, an organization needs to take that leap first. Don't bother trying to say, I'll get my receptionist to work 2 days a week on social because she's tweeting jobs on Twitter and now we have a social strategy. A lot of nonsense. It's got to be deep. And then you take your staff, and far from Roy's client who's saying, I'm getting them off Facebook, you train them on how to use these tools. You get people in, or you have people within your organization who train them how to build a Twitter stream, who train them how to build a following. There's no point even having a Twitter stream unless people are following you. And give them the content and train them how to put content out, train them how to engage, and then you actually have to change your KPIs. We have people who say, yes, we're social, but all their KPIs are about making phone calls. So your KPIs should reflect your new social stance in this world. And you should measure people about how they build their Twitter profile, if that's one of the goals, and how they, number of candidates they're bringing in from social as opposed to job boards. And so our KPIs shift to measure our strategy. And so you actually build a strong corporate brand, even if you're a 6-person company. I'll give you some examples. Go to Consult Recruitment in New Zealand. Go to People in Australia. Go to What's Next in Brisbane. These are all small companies that are much bigger now because they've built a strong social brand. You may have even heard of them. They are small companies that go to Firebrand, which is a company of 25 people, but it gets 1 million people a year reading its blog. How many people listening to this call have got 1 million people a year reading their website? And they've got 50,000 Twitter followers. How many people here work for a recruitment company who've got 50,000 Twitter followers? Not too many. But these people have built a footprint, and then they've built their employer brands under the sorry, let me say that again. They've built their consultant brands under the umbrella of their corporate brand. So if you've got a strong online presence, but you can amplify it through 20 or 30 consultants, imagine the power you've got when your blogs are going out to all their Twitter followers, all their LinkedIn connections, and they're building it every day. And that is how you differentiate. So it starts with the leadership. It moves on to a strategy. It moves on to understanding your objective. It involves an investment in a dedicated person. That person is an implementer. They're not a strategy person. They are a doer. We'll give them the strategy. And then you train your staff so they come along on the journey. And what I've just told you, about 1 out of 20 companies will actually do, and they're the ones who are making the money. That and other things, but they're the ones who are making the money and will in the future.
That's great, Greg. I appreciate it. And in fact, it leads nicely into something I think Roy wants to touch on too, and we talked about before the show, is the new sort of metrics. You know, and I've talked a lot about this when I do presentations about, you know, we tried 4 or 5 years ago to come up with new social metrics and realized that for recruiters, actually, the same old metrics were the ones that still mattered, which was how many jobs did I fill. But you're right, this has to change in terms of how we motivate our recruiters, how we reward them.
Alan, can I interrupt you? And I know that's really rude. Yeah. I would never have as a consultant's KPI how many jobs they fill. Of course, that's a measurement, but that's an outcome. We should measure the activities that lead to the outcome. Telling a recruiter your goal this month is 5 job fills is bullshit. They know they've got to hit their target. They've got a budget for the year. They're trying. They're thinking about it. You've got to be more helpful, and you've got to say these are the activities that will lead to your success. And those activities are some of the old activities, and some of them are new activities. And they should be more candidate-orientated than they are client-orientated. And so what you hit on there is a really key thing. A lot of people are drumming recruiters with demotivating, negative KPIs that don't measure the right things. The KPI should measure the things that lead to success, not the actual outcomes.
And I think Roy wants to pile right in on that one, Roy. Greg, do you agree with?
Alan, I missed, you've just cut out. I'm going to presume, I'll just pick
Roy?
up. Sorry, Alan, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, so do you agree with what the point that Greg was just making, that in fact the things we are measuring are probably the wrong things, and we do need different metrics, metrics that really matter?
Yeah, listen, for sure. It's funny because I get asked this a lot of the time. People say, oh, but Roy, you know, it's easy for you because you've got, you know, big followings on LinkedIn and Twitter and all of these different things. Do you know what? Those metrics are absolute bullshit. It's like, it's not about the numbers, okay? It really isn't about the numbers. It's about the quality of that community that you've got. So I don't care whether your niche is 30 people. I would hope that it's slightly bigger, but if your niche, if your list is, I don't know, 100 people, better for you to be completely and utterly engaged with that audience than to try and go out and just build massive numbers on social media. That's definitely not the objective. Both Greg and I, and in fact, you know, everybody on the panel, and as I paid homage to earlier, Louise was the one that really started getting me interested in the whole blogging piece. Blogging before, I think, was just about putting some information out there, and if your audience liked it, they would kind of engage with it. It's become so much more powerful now. And one of the things that, you know, I'd like to do, sorry, just going back to the metrics thing, it's not about numbers, it's about the engagement. It's about measuring the engagement levels that you have with candidates. And as Greg said, there's loads of tools that can do that, loads and loads of tools, and you know, people on the panel probably better than me, including actually Steve Ward would be a good guy to talk to about engagement. In terms of this blogging, though, I think one of the most powerful things that the recruitment businesses have got to get on board with. So if you're listening to this webinar and watching this webinar, and you are not employing this strategy and this tactic in your business right now, you are missing a trick. You've got to get with this program, and that is retargeting. So anyone that's writing a blog or anyone that's putting a piece out, I first heard the phrase segmentation from Ricky Wheeler whilst he was working at Broadbean. I didn't even know what that word meant. And what Ricky was saying to me was that in marketing terms, this was a long time ago, almost 10 years ago, Ricky was saying in marketing terms, you have to look at delivering the right messages to the right people at the right time. No shit, Sherlock. But how do you do that? If, as an industry, we've traditionally done interruption advertising, and we're still doing it. You know, look at the Twitter feed. If anybody's doing this right now, look at your own Twitter feed. And if you are just tweeting job after job after job, you are boring, okay? You are boring. Certainly have a Twitter feed that does that, and with your active candidates, say to them, tune into that feed if you are looking for a job or you're active, because that's where we post everything. But if that is your solo Twitter feed, it's all about job after job after job, you are boring. You're going to bore your candidates. You're not engaging with your community. Write something else. Now, if you are then leading people to blog content or social media content, the retargeting is about using pixels. It's about, and this is really simple technology now, it's available to everybody. And as Greg said, if you don't understand it, bring an expert in who does and let them show you. But people will segment themselves. So if somebody reads an article by you, Alan, I don't know, and you've written about in-house recruiters, then it's fairly obvious that the people that will go and visit that blog, engage with that blog, comment on that blog, are going to be on the whole in-house recruiters or people interested in in-house recruitment. That's a segment. Now, in terms of the messages then that you can deliver to those people with a retargeting campaign, you're able to send stuff that is specifically written for in-house recruitment people. So then reading that message, you're like, wow, Alan's talking our language straight away, as opposed to what we would have done 20, 30 years ago, which is put up blanket advertising, Greg said, the billboards, and you know, we hope to kind of like, oh, if we hit as many people, scattergun approach, if we hit as many people as we can, one or two of those are going to engage with that message. That's not working. Big companies, forget recruitment, big companies are discovering this to their peril right now. You know, shares in businesses that aren't embracing that digital marketing strategy are failing, and they're being beaten by smaller and smaller businesses that are engaging with their audiences. One final thing, because Steve Ward, who I'm a big fan of, you know, and I know you guys have had Steve on the show before. Steve was asking the question about email marketing as part of that strategy. I believe all of these things have to be used as a blended approach. But that retargeting campaign, if you can segment, instead of it's just clients and it's just candidates, if you can segment those candidates into, I don't know, if you were dealing with accountants, part qualified, brand new, senior accountants, tax accountants, and you delivered messages and content that was specifically geared up towards that particular segment, you will have those people engage with you just automatically because you're talking their language. And there's no like and trusting. Just finally, in summing up, don't be selling, okay? Emails that are just purely about buy this or take this job or, you know, we're a brilliant recruitment company, you need to place your jobs with us. It's not about selling in an email. It's about giving. It's about delivering content over a period of time so that people do get to know, like, and trust you. And definitely ask for the order. I'm not talking about let's just turn into, you know, social media butterflies and broadcasting lots of lovely content, but we're not doing any business. Use that platform, that community that you build, and segment it, speak their language, and then go to those people. If you've got a tax accounting job, don't hit your whole candidate database. Speak to the ones that you know are active and could be or should be interested in that particular position. I hope that helps.
It has, but Alan's disappeared. What did you say, Roy?
Oh, do you know what? He just couldn't handle it.
No, you're absolutely spot on, Roy. So there's a ratio going around. You have to give 5 times to get once, or something like that. I've heard a few versions of this, but it's the
do,
point of it.
do you know what, Louis? I'd say to everyone watching this and listening to this today, I want you to picture like a bank vault, all right? One of those great big bank vaults with a great big lock on the door. And inside that vault is not money, it's goodwill. It's goodwill for clients, it's goodwill for candidates, it's clients that you've placed with, it's candidates that you've placed. And as long as you are putting more into that goodwill account, then you can make withdrawals. So you can go to that. But I know a lot of recruiters right now, recruitment businesses, that are trading on empty. They haven't put enough into that goodwill vault, that goodwill bank account, and all they're doing is just selling. I've got this job, or we're this great agency, and we're expanding, etc. That's all BS. It's all BS. If you've not put enough into that goodwill account, you can't ask that audience. And just a final thing on the email, and I will give up after that. On the email, there's so much stuff that we can do that's automated. I talk a lot to my businesses, to the people that I coach, and say to them, you've got to be educating people about your brand, about your philosophy, about your ethos. And brand for me is definitely not a logo. It's who we are, it's what we are, and it's how we do it, right? And that's the unique bit about us. Well, you can communicate that in a sequence of emails, a campaign of emails that's automated with everybody that, I don't know, engages with you. They click, they comment, they follow you on Twitter. Get those people as soon as possible into an email dialogue with you. And over the first 2 or 3 email communications, communicate something that's not about selling. Talk about why you do what you do. Talk about why the business was set up. Talk about some case studies, but don't be selling stuff. Don't be selling stuff. And in those early emails, I can see Alan's back in. In those early emails, one really simple tip that I would give to everybody is, in that first email, encourage people to whitelist you, to add you to their safe senders, because there is so much technology that's coming in, and people being blocked, and adverts being blocked, and ad blockers. That's the big thing in 2016, in fact 2015, that most people under the age of 24 have got software that's blocking adverts. So we have to think a bit smarter, all right? And that's about, if you've got blog content, run adverts to blog content. We call it native advertising, rather than running adverts to a job page that you've got. That's just wrong. And in fact, those adverts will be blocked. Will be blocked. But to content, you won't be. That's considered by the social media platforms as you giving.
Thank you, Roy. I appreciate that. And sorry I disappeared there. The joys of living in the Cotswolds, where the web works every other Tuesday, and sometimes on Wednesday. I appreciate that, guys. We've hit this sort of end line. I know Louis is going to have to go off and do some real work here in a minute. That was a great summing up, I think, on your part, Roy. Greg, give you your 60-second time to wrap up. Any final one key kernel or nugget other than go on to Savage Truth and follow your tour?
I would say that I would just encourage people listening to this to evaluate everything they're doing for its effectiveness, and to think carefully about what actually clients will pay them for and where their value is. And if you haven't understood the conversation tonight about building brand, about CRM, about digital marketing, it's really one of the things you should find out about and how it impacts your business. These are not just buzzwords. Advertising is dead for recruitment. Advertising is dying anyway. It's about content marketing. It's about building brand. And as far as LinkedIn is concerned, just as an example, I consider LinkedIn to be a place that recruiters should build their brand, and I consider that more important than as a place to source talent, which sounds like sacrilege, but in actual fact, if you build your brand on LinkedIn, the talent will come to you. And it is about changing the paradigm. We need to attract people to us, and we need to have the skills to hunt people down, those people who are not actively looking. And those are skills that typically recruiters lack. So we must reinvent that part of it. There is a big part of our job that stays the same, and that's around the influencing and the craft. But in terms of making connections, they are not made in the old way. They've got to be done through strong brand, CRM, automated marketing, and the social footprint.
Brilliant, Greg. Couldn't have summed it up better myself, so I appreciate that. Louis, I'm going to hand you in a second. Just want to thank both Roy and Greg. Let's face it, the Gripper show was absolutely as thrilling as we thought it could be, and we could probably do another 2 or 3 hours. Let me thank also everybody that's been hanging out in the chat room. There's been some great conversations going on there, and I think Steve Ward kind of mentioned that there was beers for everybody that he knows. Is that still one of the best ways to engage with people? Louis, a little bit of wrap up there, and what are we doing next month as well?
Beer is definitely the way forward, Alan, and has always been. Next time round, well, we're talking about recruitment performance, so that follows on very well people analytics, and we're coming at this from an in-house perspective and an agency perspective. Alan and Mark Stevens are definitely going to be leading the way on this one. I'll just get you the dates, guys. 23rd of March, 1 p.m. So back to that sort of lunchtime slot. And we're going to be looking at having guests from the People Analytics 2016 show in April, and they're supporting us. And one of our guests we've already confirmed is Ian Bale, Director, Global Head of Talent Acquisition and People Planning at Cisco. So some big names that are coming on to the show there, and that'll be an interesting discussion. As for this show, absolutely fantastic, as I thought. Glad the technology worked from out here in the countryside for Alan and I. The recording will go round to everyone who's watched, so you can get the replay. Email me if you want the private YouTube recording as well. We'll look at all the questions afterwards, and I'll speak to Greg and Roy and see if you guys would be happy to spend a bit of a few moments having a look over those, perhaps, if you have the time. I know you're both very busy, so we'll try and sort something out. Louise's UK Recruiter Rec Hangout blog follow-up will go out to everyone in the next week or two with a nice summary, and I'll email around everyone who's signed up as well. You're now on my Rec Hangout email list, so you will get notifications of the next one. Just unsubscribe if you don't want any more. It's fine. So great. Thank you very much, guys. Have a fantastic day. I think we'll sign off here.
Thanks all.